Potter Stewart famously said about pornography, "I know it when I see it." And most Americans are definitely seeing it. But not everyone is happy about it. Since 2016, lawmakers in at least 17 states have introduced legislation declaring pornography a public health crisis. A majority of Americans disagree, possibly. Still, studies have shown that X-rated content can normalize aggressive behavior and shape how some are, how shall we say, getting it on. Joining me to talk about this, Deborah Herbenick, professor and director of the Center for Sexual Health Promotion at Indiana University Bloomington School of Public Health. And I dragged him in this conversation, Dr. Jason Johnson, MSNBC political contributor. But I want to start with you, doctor, because in reading about this, I was really surprised at how many young people are consuming pornography. Jason and I are the age, I remember, we watched Cinemax when we were little and you saw those squiggly lines. Like, that was the most X-rated image you would see. And to have kids with these in their hands to satisfy their curiosity. I'm curious how you have seen this access to porn impact sexual behaviors in young adults.
Yeah, it's a great question. We do know that sexual behavior among young people is changing. So we now see some pretty surprising rates of what many people consider aggressive sexual behaviors or rough sex among young people, such as choking during sex, so where a person uses their hands or a belt or a cord to squeeze the neck, a whole range of rough sex behaviors. And I think that's the biggest change that we're seeing is more rough sex among teenagers and among young adults. And not just seeing the behaviors, but a real perception that it's mainstream and everybody's doing it. And because everybody's doing it, we don't even have to talk about it. And that's a really challenging place to be as a sex educator and as a parent.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary place to be. Jason, among college men, pornography use has been associated with seeing women as disposable. And for both sexes, a stronger belief in rape myths, such as like a woman asked for it because of what she wore or how much she drank. You're a college professor. How have you seen this play out in some of your interactions with some of your students?
So, Tiffany, a couple of years ago, I taught a pop culture and politics class, and we talked a lot about pornography. And I pointed out at the time that, the myth was that there was always some inappropriate professor who had some kink who would be like, I'm going to show my class pornography in order to sort of, enjoy themselves. But I pointed out to my students that a lot of the racial and psychological messages in pornography are really important for them to interpret and dig through, because at the end of the day, pornography and pornography consumption is one of the most realistic indicators as to where Americans are for a lot of reasons. Unlike books, unlike magazines, and a lot of other things, pornography it's directly hitting the brain. It's what people want to see in the privacy of their own homes. So if you're seeing messages that are racist, if you're seeing messages about Black women constantly being degraded, if you're seeing messages of sex always being associated with power and violence, that does get to the minds of these students. And what it can lead to, look, in the most positive way, it can allow students to explore sexualities that maybe they've been ashamed of. If you're an LGBTQ student and you're in a very conservative area, maybe queer sex, the only way you can get it is through porn. So it's a good thing. But on the negative level, some of these students are picking up that all sex is this violent, push yourself through the door, attack somebody else sort of thing. And they don't learn normal courtship and the kinds of things that actually make sex mutually enjoyable as opposed to just a power exercise.
Yeah, Jason makes a good point, Dr. Herbenick, because I think it's impacting the way younger people are dating and emoting and engaging each other, because in some of the research, your research and other research I've read, people start to view sex as something you do to another person instead of with another person. How can young people unlearn this behavior if pornography is where they're learning about sexual engagement?
Yeah, there's been a big push in sex education toward creating pornography literacy programs and to integrating those into sex education, because we do know now that most teenagers watch porn. They watch it alone, they watch it with friends, and they send links to each other, even at very young ages in middle school. So the average age for boys at first seeing pornography is about 13 and a half. That's the average. For girls, it's a little bit older, around 17, 18, but again, that's an average. And so young people are seeing this. So getting people to think critically about it, to ask themselves and each other questions about what they're seeing, how people are being portrayed, to again unpack issues both around racism and around misogyny are really important, because the people who are being really aggressed against generally are Black women and women more generally. There's a lot of fetishization happening within within porn as well. And it doesn't just stay within porn. It does sort of leak out into people's interpersonal lives and also gets transmitted through other media. So when we ask young people where they learn about some of the types of sex that they're having, pornography is a big one, especially for young men. But for young women, it's places like TikTok and it's Twitter memes and so on. So, what used to be only in pornography is now really mainstream in a lot of social media too that young people consume. And if we're not really critically examining what we're seeing and talking openly about it, then it just sits there and then becomes part of what they do with the people that they're having sex with. And again, as Jason pointed out, doing it to people rather than finding out what you like, rather than asking the question of what's enjoyable, how does this make you feel? Because we just know that sex has not been feeling good to a lot of people these days. And we're seeing that with declines in population level sex. Fewer young people are also having sex. Fewer adults are having sex. And I can't help but think that some of that is that what's available to them is not so pleasurable.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, the doctor makes a good point saying, asking how does this make you feel is also an issue in consent. You and I talked about that on our IG Live last week. Pornhub is the most visited site, and they do like this review every year, and they had 33.5 billion visits in 2018. When you talk to younger people, do they ever talk to you about like their date and the way that they, emote with each other?
So yes and no. One, I have to point this out because this is what I was saying about how sometimes pornography consumption can teach us a lot. Pornhub has very good white papers. Like the data analytics that they collect for what pornography people consume after the presidential election of 2020 or after the Super Bowl or during the holidays, it's actually really fascinating as a social scientist. And I've looked at that data. I'm like, wow, okay, this is how people sort of process things in the privacy of their own homes. But again, what Tiffany, what I think is really key here is young people's perception, even like my Zoomer students, are still warped by these binary ideas about pornography. We still have this idea in our heads that like, well, pornography is for losers who can't get any, right? Which is toxic on multiple levels. One, it suggests that enjoying sex is somehow indicative of your own inability to capture women, right? That's the poisonousness for men. And then for women, it's this idea that, oh, you're a bad girl if you watch this sort of thing. And that's why I think when we see this legislation where they're trying to make pornography illegal and everything else like that, porn isn't going to turn you into something that a toxic society already doesn't happen. The gentleman who killed 6 women at a massage parlor in Atlanta was railing against pornography. Porn didn't make him kill those people. He was going to be an angry incel regardless. So we have to make sure that we stop using porn as a catch-all for deeper problems in rape culture in America. Porn is a symptom. It has never been the root of our problem.
All right. Well, we're way over time, but Deborah Herbenick, I just want to ask you one last question. Is there a healthy way that people can enjoy pornography?
Yes, most people enjoy pornography without any problems. But, there's ethical porn that people can look at. Some of the most sort of equitable porn is queer feminist porn as well. So you can choose porn that is ethically created and also talk about it with your teenagers and talk about it with your partners. Don't just assume.
All right. From Capitol Hill to pornography, folks. This is the Cross Connection. I want to thank you both for being here, Dr. Deborah Herbenick and Dr. Jason Johnson. Thanks for having that important conversation. And coming up, they produce music for everyone from Janet to Mary J. And now they're doing it for themselves. The incomparable Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis join me next.